Accurate information, great music.
Drink Pepsi Black for max taste, no sugar Pepsi Black time, 7 hours.
The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
A very good morning to you with the news at this time. I am Tiana Jordan. The news comes to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories. And now to begin the news, here's a look at the lead stories. The Guyana Police Force has been instructed to put in place an ethics and integrity plan against which it must ensure its performance every year. A policeman has refused to take a breathalyzer test after he was involved in a fatal accident. In regional news, Haiti has asked Jamaica and Colombia to facilitate the transfer of a key suspect in the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. And internationally, 25 Brazilian gang members who were involved in a series of bank robberies have been killed. The details of these and other stories will be coming up right here in just a moment.
A COVID-19 PCR test is now mandatory for many routine activities, including travel and return to work purposes. At Eureka, our trained and experienced staff will ensure confidentiality while your test is conducted in a professional and timely manner, with results in just 48 hours. So the next time you require an efficient and hassle-free PCR COVID-19 test, call 624-8378, 608-8378, or 623-7233 to schedule your appointment. You can also ask about our house call testing service.
And now the news in detail. Plagued by decades of corruption and other malpractices, the Guyana Police Force has been ordered by the government to come up with a measurable plan to constantly improve its performance. Home Affairs Minister Robson Ben made clear the government's expectation at the Guyana Police Force's inaugural Integrity in Policing Symposium. He says such an ethics and integrity plan must include benchmarks to measure performance yearly and identify areas that need improvement. The Home Affairs Minister says that in addition to such a plan, police stations, units and members of the force must be rewarded with merit badges. The Home Affairs Minister also recommended that the agencies work closely together and with the community policing groups to take on board actionable intelligence in a timely manner. The Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development is again warning sections of the Georgetown City Council not to sell off certain assets at low prices. The ministry says it and other relevant government bodies are closely monitoring actions by some members of the Georgetown City Council. The ministry alleges that there appears to be a nefarious scheme to undervalue and rapidly dispose of certain city properties. According to the local government ministry, a number of the properties are of historical and cultural significance. The local government ministry says since it first expressed concern, new reports have indicated that the city council is continuing to dispose of those properties clandestinely. The Ministry of Local Government has again warned the City Council that it will not condone a violation of standards of accountability, transparency, and adherence to the rule of law. A 24-year-old Venezuelan man was killed early yesterday morning during an argument. The incident occurred at Ruby Back Dam, East Bank, Essequibo. Police said Tony Berza, also known as Bush, was stabbed to his left side. Investigators say the assailant has been identified but has not been captured. Police were informed that Berza and his brother were heading home on a bicycle after they were finished imbibing. Whilst heading home, Berza reportedly stopped at a shed to speak to two Spanish-speaking females. Police said the suspect, who is known to them, approached Berza and a heated argument ensued between them. He was stabbed with a long shine object. According to eyewitnesses, the suspect then made good his escape on foot to an unknown destination. A policeman who knocked down a pedestrian and killed him has refused to take a breathalyzer test. Detective Constable 36-year-old Ashok Lakshmi Prasad has since been placed under close arrest. Dead is 36-year-old Kwesi David of number 30 Village, West Coast, Berbice. The policeman said that yesterday afternoon he was driving on number 28 Village Public Road at a speed of about 70 to 75 kilometers per hour when David walked into the path of the vehicle. Constable Lakshmi Prasad says that on seeing the pedestrian, he applied brakes, but despite his efforts, he collided with David. Police say David was picked up in an unconscious condition and taken to the New Amsterdam hospital where he died. A close associate of veteran Guyanese aviator Malcolm Chanusu has come forward with evidence to prove that the airman stopped at a major road. Seconds later, according to the video seen by News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM, Mr. Chanusu's car was slammed by a speeding minibus. He and his wife remain hospitalized in the intensive care unit of the Georgetown Public Hospital. They are in their 80s. Police had on Saturday said that Mr. Chanusu did not stop at the junction of High and Barak Streets, but it instead crossed in an easterly direction in the path of the minibus. The owner and the driver of the bus was identified as 28-year-old Raymond Douglas of Lot 36 New Settlers Street, Mako Village, East Bank, Demerara. And now in regional news. Haiti's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Claude Joseph, has written to Jamaica and Colombia to request the transfer of Mario Palacios, the suspect in the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. Joseph formally wrote to both countries on October 28 and requested that Palacios be sent to Haiti. Palacios, a Colombian who was also a military officer, was arrested during an operation in the central Jamaican parish of Manchester earlier this month. The Caribbean Media Corporation reports that he was the subject of an international arrest warrant. In his letter to Minister of Foreign Affairs, Kamina Johnson-Smith, Joseph requested mutual legal assistance to advance the probe into the assassination of President Moïse at his private residence on July 7th. Moïse was tortured and shot multiple times, while his wife, Martine, was seriously injured. According to the investigation, Palacios was part of the commando of 4 men who entered the president's room to assassinate him. 2 of the members of his commando were later killed by the Haitian police in a clash. The other 2, including Palacios, escaped. Police in Suriname are investigating a robbery and assault at a gold mining camp. Lawmen are searching for 2 men who carried out the brazen attack on Friday at a gold settlement in an area known as Tomato. Star News reports that 2 robbers who were armed with a handgun and shotgun overran and beat the owner and 6 others. The bandits carted off 800 grams of raw gold and 7 telephones. Investigators were told that the robbers gagged the victims and beat them as well. After the theft, Star News also reports that the criminals ordered the owner to transport them to a specified location where they were picked up by another car. Barbados's Minister of Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy, Kirk Humphrey, says significant changes are being planned for the island's coastline. Speaking during yesterday's church service at the St. James Anglican Church in recognition of Bluefest Telling Our Story, Humphrey said drastic changes are being seen in the island's waters. He says these include the destruction of natural habitats, reefs being affected, and marine occupations being impacted. Barbados Today quotes him as saying that this is because of rising sea temperature levels and adaptation projects in order to stem the grave effects being seen are unavoidable. The Barbados Minister of Maritime Affairs stressed, however, that the sea space around the island still remains a viable option for jobs and recreational activities for Barbadians. At the same time, he says there must be a serious look at sustainability projects for the oceans. Government and all citizens, he says, must get involved. The Caribbean's tourism challenges have not been created by COVID-19, but have instead been exposed and amplified. This is according to tourism professor of the University of the West Indies, Andrew Spencer. In an interview with the Sunday Business Guardian, Spencer explained that the problems before the pandemic are the same problems today. He says they are climate change, social exclusion, and high leakage rates. These, he advised, will continue without real structural changes. Zeroing in on Trinidad and Tobago, he said the country's decision not to open its borders for tourism was right because it does not depend heavily on the industry. He advised that a slow and methodical reopening for Trinidad and Tobago is best and will allow for proper monitoring of successes and failures. Additionally, he noted that countries which have been leading the charge in the region in post-COVID efforts appear to be Barbados and few Eastern Caribbean states in terms of managing infection rates and opening up of borders. Jamaica, he also said, has done well with uptick in arrival numbers, but not as well with the management of infection rates. And now for the international news, the latest coming from the BBC World Service.
BBC News. Hello, this is Jerry Smith. China's leader Xi Jinping will address the vital UN climate change summit in Glasgow with only a written statement, underlining the problems negotiators will face in securing significant progress. For some weeks, it's been assumed Mr. Xi would not attend in person, and he's not left China since the start of the pandemic. Our climate editor is Justin Rowlatt.
If Xi is not fully committed to this process, then one does wonder how much the whole conference can achieve, given that more than a quarter of emissions come from China. Without China, I think it's fair to say COP26 cannot succeed. That said, there are more than 200 members of the Chinese delegation. Talks have been going on for months between the British organisers, and particularly John Kerry has been shuttling back and forth to Beijing to discuss all of this. So, in the background, there is probably quite a good understanding by the Americans and the British of China's position.
The chief executive of Barclays Bank, Jess Staley, has stepped down as UK regulators investigate his links with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Barclays, one of the world's biggest banks, said Mr. Staley had agreed to resign after he received preliminary findings in the investigation. Katie Prescott has more.
Barclays say that as a result of this inquiry and the fact that Mr. Staley wants to contest it, that they feel they have no other option, he has no other option, than to step down as chief executive. I mean, what we do know is they say in their statement that the investigation makes no findings that Mr. Staley saw or was aware of any of Mr. Epstein's alleged crimes.
Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has appealed to his countrymen to take up arms to block and destroy Tigrayan rebel forces. He issued the statement on Facebook after rebels of the TPLF said they'd seized control of more areas of Dessie and Kombolcha in Amhara province. Catherine Biarahanga reports.
Dessie and Kombolcha are the most strategic targets so far in the Tigrayan rebel forces' advance towards the capital Addis Ababa. The government denies they have fallen, but internet and phone connections to both towns are down, which often happens when rebels seize territory in this conflict. The focus for the international community, including the United States, is to stop the growing humanitarian crisis. Thousands of people had sheltered in Dessie after fleeing their homes as the fighting advanced. While further north in Tigray, the United Nations says 400,000 people are facing famine-like conditions.
Thailand is dropping almost all quarantine requirements for foreign visitors as it tries to revive its vital tourism industry. A mandatory 2-week quarantine period was imposed on all passengers arriving in the country 18 months ago to try to prevent the spread of COVID. World News from the BBC. Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has set out his government's priorities after a surprisingly strong election victory. Mr. Kishida said there would be a large-scale economic stimulus package by the middle of the month to tackle the coronavirus crisis. He said he would also step up defence spending in response to regional security threats. Russia has suspended its diplomatic mission to NATO in response to last month's expulsion of 8 members of the mission suspected of spying. The Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, said the fact suggested that NATO did not wish to interact with his country. NATO said it regretted the Russian decision and called for meaningful dialogue. Police in Brazil say they believe that 25 suspected gang members killed in a raid on Sunday were involved in a series of notorious bank robberies around the country. Will Leonardo reports.
The raid on 2 farms in the state of Minas Gerais was intended to stop suspected gang members from targeting local banks. Police said they'd come under heavy fire and had to act to protect themselves, killing 25 people. Now, a senior officer has said that the materials recovered from the farms suggest the gang was the same group behind a number of headline-capturing raids on cities, including Aracatuba in August. There, bank robbers planted explosives around the town centre, took hostages and engaged in shootouts, killing 3 people. They tied people to the top of their getaway cars as human shields. Several rifles, grenades and stolen vehicles were seized in Sunday's operation.
More than 30,000 visitors to Shanghai's Disney Resort have been forced to take a COVID test before leaving after the discovery of a single infection. Video footage shows people being tested inside the park on Sunday with fireworks and classical music in the background. All of them tested negative, but the resort has been closed for at least the next 2 days. China is still pursuing a zero-COVID strategy. BBC News.
The news came to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories.
Don't let the fear of contracting the coronavirus disease deter you from seeking the medical care you need. At Eureka Labs, we ensure the safety of our clients and staff with our rigid sanitization routine. This involves the use of ultraviolet lights to effectively rid the air and all surfaces of viruses and bacteria that may be present throughout the lab daily. The light works to rapidly inactivate microorganisms through a physical process that is invisible to human eye. So the next time you need a checkup, don't hesitate to give us a call on 225-7574 to schedule your appointment.
And now to end the news, here is a recap of the leads. The Guyana Police Force has been instructed to put in place an ethics and integrity plan against which it must ensure its performance every year. A policeman has refused to take a breathalyzer test after he was involved in a fatal accident. In regional news, Haiti has asked Jamaica and Colombia to facilitate the transfer of a key suspect in the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. And internationally, 25 Brazilian gang members who were involved in a series of bank robberies have been killed. And that's the end of the news.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio Newsroom For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.
News Talk Radio Guyana is the station for you, bringing you news updates every hour, major news 3 times a day, edutainment on a higher level, shows like Beat the Clock, Brunch on the Coast, The Afternoon Jam, Youth's Perspective. It's a station that goes wherever you go, streaming online at www.bit.ly/newstalk1031. It's News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM.